Pretty much what you'll see in this video is it's all GoPro. This was the final episode of all the vlogs of the roof in Anaconda. We had like all hands on deck, so there wasn't much filming going on. It's just GoPro footage. Thank you for being patient. If you felt that was long, you should have been there.
This was progress.
What you're seeing now is those heavy ass rolls of TPO coming up on the forklift, and Quentin and Nico, my muscle guys, up on the roof. I'm running the forklift. I think the big savior of this job was the fact that we decided to get that forklift. Can you imagine how much of a nightmare it would be taking all that stuff up on the scissor lift? Quentin never offered. I think he was scared. One missed move and you're gonna do some damage. I mean, you got power lines on one side, you got wall that you're barely getting over. So this is Quentin putting the board all the way around. He was a trooper on that. Not an easy job. I guess I was still working on that 2x on top here.
I think you worked on those boards for like 5 days.
But you gotta understand, guys, this roof is 150 foot long on those two sides and 50 foot long on the other two sides. I mean, that's a lot. And he had to do 2 rows of these boards to be wide enough to cap that wall. So it is a big job. Well, I became a loner, man. That whole wall on the right-hand side, I had help. I had the wonderful hands of Nico helping me. And then, but just somewhere in there, I just lost him. Started helping Cassie.
Oh, the wall panels. Yeah, you guys were putting up those wall panels that Cassie and I were cutting. That whole wall over there was very time-consuming because of all those steps. You had to cut each of those at an angle, and it was like a whole... Once we got to the flat wall, it went a lot quicker.
You can see that piece of plywood there, that's covering up our drain, trying to keep the crap out of there. And now we're going up with the ISO board on the walls. Some of it, we just Tapconned it and glued it right to those brick walls. And on the other side, we built that wall, so we were able to screw it right to the plywood. Again, that's all new block right there. You see that was put in by the brick guys to get that wall up to par. And while they were doing the walls, we started putting down the sheets on the ground. So this would probably be the next day now. And so we just brought up a bunch of ISO boards and we could just start stacking them down. Because this part was gonna go fast. You'd only have to cut like one on the end of the row, and then you could put down like another 4 or 5 before you have to cut another one.
Yeah, this day felt very, very productive.
Yeah, so we'll continue down with putting it on the ground, and Quentin will continue on. I think Quentin and Cassie, didn't you guys continue working on the walls?
I think Nico was helping.
You were cutting them. You were cutting them, and he was putting them up.
Yeah.
And you were cutting for us too.
Yeah.
So Cassie was cutting all the ISO board for both the ground crew and the wall crew. Me and Mandy were setting them. Again, I put down the number of fasteners that they told me to put for how thick the board was, but I wish I'd have put more. Cassie says I'm silly, but some of them curled a little bit on the edges, and I don't like it. Another thing that I would do differently if I was doing this again. So like I say, we're learning as we go. Again, that tar paper doesn't need to be there. We were just trying to keep the water out of the building because we were sick of it. I mean, we were just sick of it. And I wish I could tell you, yay, success, we finally did it right, but it was a nightmare. I think you mentioned this, as you watch these, you're like, oh, that was a big project. Oh, it was so nice when that was done. And then you're like, then it hits your mind, the next project was just as big and just as bad. Everything about this roof was so big that when we got something done, you really didn't get a chance to feel any like, oh, yes, that's done. You know, this day here, I had to meet somebody, so I left just a little bit before we were done. And we were beat that day. I mean, it was a hard day. So right now Nico and Quentin are cutting the rolls to length and as far as width, because we do starter strips around the edges so that it's stronger on the edges rather than putting 10 foot wide stuff down the edges. We did 5.
And honestly, putting the TPO down wasn't bad. I feel like we did that pretty quickly too. But the walls were a bit of a pain.
What are you talking about? Me and Nico single-handedly rolled pretty much the entire roof.
That's
of
what I was
TPO.
saying though, but I'm saying like we got that done.
Where
like
were you that day?
I was help.
Is that the one you had to
I think
go
I
back
had
to
Walker.
Billy's?
No, I think I had to take. Yeah, if I had to go to Billy's, I had to watch Walker for a few days there because Rachel flew home.
Because that was the day that the seamer broke. But yeah, it was pretty much me and you. Like the whole, minus like 5 feet around the whole edge. Mm-hmm. Me and you single-handedly rolled and screwed all those out.
Everything went great on this day. This wasn't a bad day, was it, Nico? I mean, it felt like you were getting a lot done right up until the point that the welder broke. I'm not sure where you and me were at this time. Well, no, there we are now, but I don't know.
Wiring in the plug.
We were doing a bit of fighting with that stupid welder. Not going to get into all the details on that, but yeah, I think we were getting power up to the roof. Basically, you can see Cassie and I starting to weld now. We did our test strips, set it all up, and as we're welding, we were literally saying, this is way easier than I expected it to be. This can't be this easy. There's something, because it was going really well. I mean, we would question a little bit that it was tight enough, because this stuff it's not like it's glued down. It's mechanically fastened. So getting it nice and flat, when the weather changes, the temperature changes, it gets hot, it gets bigger, so you get wrinkles. So we were worried about that, but I'm not anymore. I'm 100% convinced that's just the way it works. So when we got over to this side, these guys were getting all ready for us, and me and Cassie were gonna run over there and weld the rest of that, and this is the day that the welder broke, which is why we decided to put the plastic down.
So I think this is the next day. Me and Nico are still doing our thing. We had a few more strips to roll down. Here, at this point, we can't do any more welding because our heat welder is down for the count. We've contacted the company that we got it from, trying to get the replacement parts.
It was showing rain. We'd have like 2 or 3 days on the tail end of this. It's like every 3 days it would rain for 1 or 2 days, or at least it would show a possibility of it. And we got to the point to where we didn't trust a 15% chance. Every 15% chance we got nailed. Not a lot, but enough to make a hell of a mess. So we weren't taking any chances anymore. Once again, got the plastic out, and it's just a nightmare, guys. First thing we did is we stapled it up on those boards that Quentin put up there, which later became a problem because now I've got to deal with all these staples that are under my TPO. And then we wrapped it down the wall, and we came back down onto the floor, and we taped it about every 4 foot with just a little piece of tape, then that'll hold it. And I'm hoping that the water will flow over that and then go on the roof and come on down, and then we'll stop most of it. Well, we got rain, and the rain found its way in between our spaces of tape. And it wasn't a big rain, but it was enough that it had caused me some grief with some of my working materials. I don't remember that one causing us a lot of trouble downstairs. I don't think much water came into the building. A little bit, I think, went on the steps or something.
Not nearly as much as
Right. So that wasn't. But now I got to go up there and I got to dry underneath my ISO board and underneath my TPO because I don't want to cover up water on my brand new roof. It was just rain was a nightmare. We're talking just little bits. So I'm still down a welder and I'm looking at this thing and it's saying 15%, 30%, 30, 40%. I'm like, guys, I can't risk it. So we went and bought tape and literally taped every foot of that perimeter, taped the plastic down to the TPO, which became an absolute nightmare because it didn't rain. We got 0 rain, of course. It would have held, but we got 0 rain. And then the welder comes back and we want to go back to work, so we go to peel it up, and you know how tape never sticks when you want it to stick? Well, when you don't want it to stick, it never comes up. So I bought multiple bottles of glue adhesive remover, and Nico and Cassie spent an entire afternoon scraping adhesive up off of this TPO because it was right where we wanted to weld. So again, if I could go back I'd have figured out a way to go another 3 foot in. I'd have done something different. Those things, like I said, the chasing the rain was by far the worst nightmare of this roof.
Yeah, during that time while the machine was gone, that's when we went on the ATV trip with Cousin Ed and his friends. That's when the transmission went out on Rattler. So.
Now we're dealing with the tape. You see those lines on that? They're in a very bad spot.
We went in with a series of chemicals. It was pretty much Cassie and Nico that did the whole thing, but they had to go in with a series of chemicals to get off this glue to clean the strip on where the TPO was going to be welded. So they spent probably 4 hours.
It's another area of concern for me now because we worked our butt off cleaning that, but I'm still not positive that we didn't impact how that welded. I'm just not positive of it. I just don't know how we could have cleaned it any better. It was a nightmare. And we're just now getting ready to start welding. So we're getting the seams that have been out there for a week and a half getting dirty. We're getting them all cleaned up.
But here he is, we got a welder back up. So Shane's doing some heat welding here, welding all these seams together.
Again, I spent $7,000. I didn't buy the China welder. I bought a good welder, and the stupid thing broke the first day we used it. So they worked with us. They gave us a new part. Everything's fine there. I don't hate them. It just was a bad situation. I mean, some of the people treated me a little bit like I was stupid, but
It's to be expected
But-
because they probably deal with stupid people.
whatever. I got the part. I'll forgive them, but I ain't forgiving Monster Transmission. Monster Transmissions is evil. I'm serious. They're evil, man. The way they treated us is ridiculous. And they treat other people that way. It wasn't just us.
So we're getting those perimeter pieces rolled out, and then Nico and Cassie were screwing those off. Huge shout out to Nico, because on this trip his job switched from a cameraman to a roofer. Not designed, not planned, not intended.
So yeah, right now we're putting all the screws around the edge, tight down to it, and then we'll come back and we'll follow up and we'll weld that perimeter strip down to our TPO. Missed a little bit here, but basically then we come down and we weld the wall sheet down on top of those screws we put on the edge and wrap that over the wall. And on this side on the right there of your screen, that's that stepped wall we made wider, and then Cassie and I have to come back and boot up every single one of those corners. It took us about a day. So, and then you see the roof vents, we had to flash them, we ran into some problems there. This right here was a bunch of work, wasn't it, Cassie? So I, being me, wanted to make sure that this roof was screwed down appropriately. So they called for what I'm doing right now, putting that row of screws down those wide strips. But that strip right down the middle of that narrow strip there where you can see all those patches, that was me, and Cassie had to cut me a lot more strips to do that. But I feel a lot better because that's the area where the wind gets by those walls and wants to lift that roofing up. We learned that with our tar paper. This is the day we were working on fixing those corners up, which I'm sorry, it's just me and Cassie now. Everybody left.
That's the drip edge.
So are we working on the drip edge? Oh wow, so you didn't, I know you took pictures of that though. Stupid camera guy must have missed it. This is the drip edge. I don't know if is that what we were doing that day as the drip edge? You sure? I know this is.
the
I'm not sure that we weren't working on our corners then.
no. We were.
when I was talking.
I had a cold gun.
We were or we weren't?
We were not. Or
I think we were.
I
think we were, because I seen how rough the corners looked compared to that look now. See how those corners are nice and white and clean? They're not folded over or anything.
The journey. When this started, our goal was 2 weeks. From like start to finish, the goal was to have it done in 2 weeks, and it took probably a month and a half.
It's a month and a half at least, yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a genius on this stuff by any means, but I believe we have a very good roof. We did everything as right as we could. We fixed stuff that we ran into. I would do some things different, but see, that's what it looked like before we cleaned it up and patched it all up.
It's good and sealed now. We don't have to worry about it this winter. That was our biggest concern, is that another snow came and all those water leaking down into the building and doing more damage. The building itself is still very structurally sound, and we just didn't want it to get any damage. So it's out of the way. What's next? Nobody really knows.
What we do know is roof is 100% done. We shouldn't have to touch it anymore. Should be perfect. It should be nice and sealed off, no leaks. So that was the boring part. We can now move on to funner things, and it's going to get. There's still going to be plenty more work, but it's going to get a lot more fun when you can begin to remodel the inside. So yeah, we're really looking forward to that.
So yeah, again, thank you so much for being patient and watching our roofing videos. I know that that's not like super exciting, but it's part of our journey to get BW Blacksmith headquarters up and running. And we're doing all this while we're building Brewsters and setting up crews to do that here and in Montana.
What we're doing today is
And it was a really crazy time. Crazy enough that we probably didn't do as good a job videoing as we could, because our video guy turned into a roofer for about 4 weeks. So again, thanks for watching, and that's done.